Welcome to WMB, everybody. Ben Mankiewicz, Wes Clark, no Michael Shore. There's a movement now to go back to BMW.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're thinking about it.
Keep me appraised of the
All right,
movement.
keep you updated. So today, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, we keep talking about Afghanistan, but I think it's relevant, and she has sent a letter to Secretaries Gates and Clinton saying, in essence, hey man, we need a time for withdrawal. We need it made very clear. You keep talking about starting it this summer and then continue and then ending it in 2014. We need something specific. So let me tell you about what she had to say specifically, get your reaction, Wes. Part of her letter says, I'm concerned the drain on our resources in Afghanistan may deteriorate our flexibility to address other global threats. In the past few months, upheavals in the Middle East have posed new challenges for our government as a whole, obviously talking about Egypt and Libya, including the military, yet our flexibility of response appears to be compromised in part by our ongoing military involvement in two other Muslim-majority countries. So she's putting it in the context of we can't do anything else. You usually look at it as we shouldn't be doing this and we shouldn't be doing anything else.
We shouldn't. But I mean, it's an argument. I mean, it's been argued really since we went into Iraq and Afghanistan that if something happened in Korea or if something happened somewhere else, we just wouldn't have the soldiers to respond to it. And the Army is stretched thin, and we've worn down the equipment, we've worn down the people with 3 and 4 deployments.
How can we have worn down the equipment when the defense budget is so fat, so enormous? Just
because you're operating in desert environments and the sand gets into everything. And since they're machines, it causes wear and tear on the equipment.
If we needed to do something in Libya, as Gaddafi seems to be winning now, would we be able to do anything other than a no-fly zone? Do we have the troops?
You could. I mean, you couldn't occupy it. You could do something. I mean, you could always put a battalion or two over there. But why? Why? Why do we have to keep going to all these places? I mean, what did we need troops for in Egypt? What do we need troops for in Libya? Why do we keep going everywhere? It only makes it worse. It's like the argument of, well, if we don't something hard, if we don't get involved, back in Vietnam, if we don't fight it here, all of Southeast Asia will fall. Okay, and a lot of it did, and it didn't affect us. Had horrible ramifications for the Cambodians.
Right, it didn't work out so well for them. So is it a valid reason then to say, though, that it limits our, okay, sure, Egypt and Libya.
It's a valid reason. It's a valid reason if you want to talk to people who want to keep interfering everywhere. Yeah, it's a valid reason for them. It's not a valid reason for me.
But of course, if what you're trying to do is convince people who want to interfere everywhere, it's not a bad tactic to take.
It's not a bad tactic to take.
Here's what else she said. This is how she ended her letter to Clinton and Gates. It is critical, however, that we provide for a date certain for withdrawal of our combat forces in order to give certainty to the American people to ensure maximum flexibility in responding to other contingencies, that's what we just talked about, and to publicly endorse the Afghan government's assumption of lead responsibility as planned. You don't think there's anything about the Afghan government's ability to lead as planned?
The Afghan government it's not going to work when we're gone.
So does Afghanistan disintegrate further when we leave?
If by disintegration you mean will the Taliban take over? Probably.
And is that the end of the world?
No. They were there before 9/11 for many years.
When conservatives want to...
But I should say, look, it sucks for the Afghan people. There's no question it sucks for the Afghan people if the Taliban takes over again. But
right, there are a lot of things that suck that we can't control with our military.
We can't control. And by bombing people and shooting them, you're not going to change people's minds. Like, I don't know how many times people have to hear it. I mean, if somebody bombed your neighborhood, would you be pissed off? Would you care what their fucking excuse was for bombing your neighborhood?
And would you ever forgive them?
No.
When conservatives want to get on doves, or who they perceive as doves, or just their political enemies, even though it's hard to argue that Barack Obama is a dove, they will say, if you give a time certain for withdrawal, you're telling the enemy when you're leaving and giving him a strategic advantage.
Yeah, and? Look, are we going to make Afghanistan the 51st state? Are we going to make it?
No, I don't think so.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to leave.
Unless, by the way, it would give the Republicans 2 Republican senators, then they
might be into it. But
right.
We're not going to make it a state, all right? There's not some huge network of allies around that's going to buffer it from what's going to happen, it's going to be a client state for Pakistan.
But what about giving the opponents, what about giving the enemy this date certain? What's wrong with that argument? That they'll be like, okay, you're leaving on July 13th, so we'll attack on July 14th.
Because that argument will always exist. You're always going to leave, and at some point everyone's going, oh, we can't leave.
You mean because even if you don't give the date certain, at some point
Dude,
they're going to know because...
We're there 10 more years, and you go, oh, well, we're going to pull out July 2022. Oh, don't tell them. They'll know. Dude.
But also, won't they know when we start the process of leaving?
Well, yeah, of course they are. Plus, you have to tell the Afghan government, which I'm sure is riddled with ISI and Taliban agents anyway,
it'll be a secret.
They'll know.
But also, when you start literally putting troops on planes, when guys start going home...
Well, yeah, it's obvious then.
Yeah, and that's not a process that takes a week, so they know.
It's a process that takes, as the Pentagon will tell you, it takes well over a year.
So
it's
that
a
argument,
long time to move all that stuff around.
So that argument, a total red herring without validity.
People always have that argument. People always have, oh, you can't do this or else. Or else what? I mean, it's not a clear and present danger to the United States.